Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Richard Morco of the Long Hill Report. And we have, as usual, our guest, Gus Steves. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. I'm slightly sorry to be here this weekend. I had planned to be at my villa in Provence. I don't have a villa in Provence, and that's the sad thing because I could have had one. I knew something was going to happen. I should have investigated the betting markets. Well, I didn't even have to because I knew it was a sure thing. I didn't bet on something. I didn't take the family's meager savings and put it on Joe Biden pardoning his son. We all knew that was going to happen, and he did it.
Of course he did.
And that's why I'm here this week. That's why I'm still poverty-stricken. I hope you will share some small sympathy towards me.
We could probably send you a few pennies.
What?
We could probably send you a few pennies.
After what I lost, you think that can make up for it ever?
No.
Okay. All right. So that's my big thing. There were all these talking heads. I remember it was a guy with glasses. I don't know who he was. He was saying how noble Joe was, because he was not pardoning his son. And it just went on and on. Now, there's a guy come on TV now and said, ladies and gentlemen, I was not merely wrong. I was buffoon level wrong. No, it's not going to happen.
Of course not.
But there's a lot more murky aspect to the Hunter Biden pardon. Joe was not merely pardoning himself. Hunter.
His son,
he was pardoning himself.
Well, it depends.
Let me explain. He pardoned him. I believe the pardon was started for things that happened 2014 and after.
Yeah.
Come on, that's where the fingerprints are.
Oh, I know.
And guess who else was it? Remember that thing where Joe was talking with the other? I think they were Atlantic counselor or Council of Foreign Relations people. I told the guy in the Ukraine, if you don't, come up, you don't fire the prosecutor, you aren't getting the money.
Yeah.
Well, Joe's words, son of a bitch. That was Joe's words.
Yeah.
I mean, the guilt goes up to the top.
Oh, there's no question about that. Although theoretically, I don't see it happening probably, but in theory, with Hunter now being immune to prosecution, if you have a halfway decent prosecutor who has done their homework, they could actually basically make him testify on the stand against his father. Theoretically, will it happen? Probably not.
Well,
because the Biden lawyers will drag it out until Joe's in the grave.
Yeah.
And then 40 years thereafter.
You can make Joe, theoretically make him testify.
Theoretically,
we know
yes.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I know it's not going to happen.
So, you have the next shot.
I had two things. One is that lately I've actually been reading Chinese history of all things. And I came across references recently that from the 2nd century that sound an awful lot like what's going on now. Okay? And I'll just read a quick quote here. A brief period of prosperity followed the relaxation of Emperor Wu's fiscal policies. Economic health of the nation gradually worsened. Corruption spread through the government from top to bottom. Land and wealth became concentrated in the hands of large officials or merchant families. Government maintained dikes and waterworks fell into disrepair, increasing the menace of flood and drought. It was when conditions had reached a critical stage that a dictator named Wang Mang managed to seize power and set about to remedy the situation by a series of sweeping reforms.
I think, yep.
And that what makes me think is, are we at that point yet in this country? And if so, who's our Wang Mang?
Okay,
I don't see Trump being him, because I don't think he's that organized.
China, of course, that was just, China's been around a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
that was one
of the periods where they had a dissolution, and then they had periods of the Middle Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely true. The shining bit of the planet. And then they'd have another bad spot.
Yeah, exactly.
So that happened.
That's what happens. That's the cycle that happens in civilizations. We haven't hit that first crash yet in our country.
Well, we had a small bag of club interlude, and he basically says
A little
that,
bit, but we haven't crashed yet.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm talking about as a discussion point,
right.
and that happens in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read what I wrote about
Yep.
that. Mm-hmm. I think we're not at a good spot.
I think
Does that mean we're over the edge? Does it mean a total crash or just a meander?
We don't
And
know.
maybe a back cycle up. Now remember, there was a Roman Republic, Roman Empire,
Mm-hmm.
then the Byzantine Empire. So they would go up and
That's happened to all empires. They kind of do
Yeah.
this, and they sometimes bounce up, then they go back down again. They bounce up again, they go back down again.
So
The trend tends to go this way.
So you then bring up a bit of China's bad spot, and it sounds a little familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And as they say, let me just say, as they used to say in the city of my birth, not a wicked shaka.
No, I know.
So I mean, yeah, to be expected.
I just thought that was an interesting observation.
I'd
Recently, and
say it's
sounds very familiar.
it's quite an interesting, bit of history,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the Twain thing: history doesn't repeat; it rhymes.
Yep.
So it's not exactly the
Right.
same thing,
Right.
but to all my friends who have jobs in the Democratic Party, close enough for government work.
Of course, they may not have jobs in the Democratic Party too much longer if they're not careful.
Well, they blew it this time, and they
did.
so totally overplayed their hand.
Of course they did. They didn't have a hand.
Well,
I think they were trying to make it pretend that they had a straight flush and they maybe had a pair of twos.
pair?
Maybe.
They had
The
two.
keyword is maybe.
One pair. They didn't have. They didn't have two pairs.
Exactly. They had a pair of twos.
Okay. So other articles, which I know I'm going to get a reaction from you on this. Bitcoin hit 100,000 this morning. Oh, there! I saw it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Did I predict it? This was even more predictable than Biden pardoning his kid.
Probably.
Anyway, you know what? I don't know if there's anything real to Bitcoin.
I don't think there is.
You don't. I know. Yeah, well, you have said that before.
We said that before. I know.
I don't know. But what I do know is if you have one Bitcoin today, you can sell it for a real $100,000. Now,
that is true.
is $100,000 real?
That's
That
a good
ain't what it
question.
used to
That's a
be,
good
maybe.
question.
But
I have to wonder, we have this, not only just Bitcoin, but all of this other cyber cash floating around. And I have to wonder how much of that is causing, A, a lot of the inflation we see, and B, the fact, especially all of the various massive purchases of properties that we're seeing.
okay.
Now.
I'd like to know how you tie this to
Why,
inflation.
I'll explain. I think to me it seems like people who know something about how money actually operates might have some money in one of the various cyber currencies, Bitcoin and its kin. Bitcoin's obviously the most famous one. And or in various illegal activities. And but they have enough working brain cells to pull it out of those and put it in something that actually has long-term value, which will be property.
Okay.
So if they take it out of those things and they buy up properties, and so we're starting to see rents skyrocketing, prices of property have been high for a couple of years now, unusually high, especially in places like Southbridge where we live. And we see issues of numbers of, we had whole streets getting bought up for tens of millions of dollars of rental property, and that's ridiculous. That sounds like money laundering to me.
I'm aware of this. The question is, and I looking for somebody who is really knowledgeable
That would
about
be good. I agree.
really, really knowledgeable. No, who can connect, say like, I have a whole desk, top, bureau top, of all the letters I get offering to my house.
Right. I get a bunch
our
of them too.
house.
We get them a bunch too. From the same places usually. First, like same 2 or 3 addresses.
There's a lot of, I have, I could say there's probably at least 15 different entities. What I want to do, what I would love to do, I don't love to do, I wish it would stop, would be to tie who gets what from where.
That would be interesting.
Now,
Yeah.
the only way this type of thing can happen, you said, oh, well, is this cause of inflation? First of all, give me the definition of inflation.
Well, when the prices keep rising beyond, I think what the average person can really afford to over the long term.
Is that inflation? I mean, or is that just price, supply and demand? Now,
I think it's. I think the argument that there's a difference. There really is no difference.
tell me how we
'Cause
make
the two of
money.
them work
How
together.
they make? Tell me how they create money in this country.
By interest.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what inflation is, essentially interest.
No, it isn't. No, come on.
The two are directly
No,
connected.
they are not. What happens is the Federal Reserve they will issue debt and they will print it as money. Now,
And then the banks add to that debt by jacking up their interest rates and lowering it out again.
but
and
that
again
does
and again.
not cause inflation.
It is by
No, it is
definition
inflation is the oversupply of money. It's when the government will not actually live within its means and will print money to buy what they want.
That's part of it.
That is it.
That is part of it. I agree.
That is no. What
But
you're talking about is supply and demand.
Wall Street is doing exactly the same thing, both with cyber cash and all of the investments they're doing. They are
But
jacking up the rate just as much as the government.
That is
Because
not.
the government is not creating the cyber cash. The private entities.
That is not.
That's where a
inflation.
lot
That
of the money
has nothing
is.
to do with inflation.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
No,
when,
it doesn't.
As I pointed out, when you're transferring it from cyber cash to the real world, that's inflationary.
No, what you are doing is when they first create it, and yeah, that kind of happens. That they issue.
And it's going on all the time.
Do you know? Okay, how does Bitcoin come into being?
That's what I just told you how it transfers in.
Now, how does it come into being?
Because of energy consumption through Bitcoin, quote unquote, mining.
Okay, yeah, they
take the energy that they use it. It's almost magic.
It isn't.
It doesn't
I
make
don't
any
even
sense
know if
how
it's-
it works.
I do not know if it's real.
I don't think it is real, but
I do not know if it's going to crash. I am surprised every day when I see this. But the thing is, it's not inflation. You told me before that like prices of commodities.
Everything goes up. They're all
but
entwined.
but it's not going up. It's going up because there's more printed money.
There's also more cyber cash because a lot of the money we have these days doesn't ever get printed.
There's
no
obviously
cash.
that's obvious.
So, which means it has to be included in inflation by definition. Because the money is still circulating. It's just not physical money.
It doesn't have to be printed as long as it's honestly accounted for.
It doesn't have to be honestly accounted for. Most of the stuff that's going on in the cyber world isn't honestly accounted for.
Yeah,
That's
but you
the
say,
problem.
okay, if you want to, if you, one thing that's bad for you is buying gummies every day and eating $10 worth of gummies.
Sure.
But all the gummies you eat and all the money you spent on them doesn't cause inflation. It's just the supply and demand in your consumption. Has nothing to do with inflation. Inflation is the false printing of the money.
Which includes cyber cash, because that's all false money.
That's not real money. That's a commodity.
But
Look,
it's current. It's still current. It's being treated as currency, though. You have to include that, otherwise your numbers don't mesh.
I did a book review of digital gold, which was about the origin of the digital gold.
Okay.
And part of the review is I went to these, what do you call them, meetings about what do you call it, Bitcoin,
Yep.
up in Northampton.
Okay.
And they were really sharp, techie people.
Mm-hmm.
I had for that type of thing, I had no reason to be in the room. I was the wrong person to be there. But I asked them one question.
Okay.
How do you square Bitcoin with Gresham's law? You know what Gresham's law is?
I've heard the term. I couldn't explain it.
Okay. Gresham's law says that good money, bad money drives good money out of circulation.
Okay. And how does Gresham define bad money and good money?
Well, gold would always be good money. The denarius, the late imperial denarius, was bad money because it was all just base metal. The hyperinflation of currency is bad money. So, So I said, I see, I didn't say I saw this. I said I wanted to find out. What do you guys think about it? They had no idea.
That doesn't surprise me.
But you didn't either.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yet you don't either. You didn't either.
Well, my point is, you were in a room full of techies.
Yeah, but
And
you
the
don't
tech
understand what
issues.
Oh, I'm not in a room with techies except for Drew. I'm not in a room with techies now, and you didn't know what Gresham's law is, and it's
Okay.
fundamental to understanding inflation.
You don't seem to. Unfortunately, I don't think you're listening.
Maybe
Because
not.
I said
First of
because
all, I'd
all
like
of
you
the
to repeat that.
currency, the fake currency and the real currency have basically intertwined in our economy.
That's ridiculous.
But that's what's
I disagree.
happening.
I absolutely disagree
But
with
that's
that.
what's in fact happening. That's the problem. We need to separate out the two kinds to get back to something that
How are
resembles
they
a real
intertwining?
currency.
How are they intertwining?
Look at-
Nobody goes down to their pizza shop and buys a pizza with a Bitcoin. So they're
in
not,
some cases
but they
you
do
can.
with a no, you.
There is
they-
there is a Bitcoin ATM in Big Bunny.
I know, I know that.
And some other places are doing that kind of thing. Yes, you can't do, but the point is,
We would be crazy to do that.
I agree with you. I think the average person would be. But at the Wall Street level, the two of them are intertwining.
How are they intertwining?
Because some of the same people that are running some of the banks in Wall Street are also invested in Bitcoin and other things.
But that's an investment.
And they're invested in
That's
the real
an
thing.
inve-
And they're translating.
That's an
And they're
investment.
crisscrossing between them.
You can go.
They're taking the money from one side,
That-
puting into the economy on the other side, and
That's-
vice versa.
That's an.
It's becoming a
No,
complete
it's not.
criminal mess.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
Tell me how they're putting it in one thing into the other.
Because all of their economic transfers are all cyber. They don't- so much of-
What economic transfer?
Look at the way the banks run. When was the last time any major bank, maybe some of the street level ones do it, but any major bank's transfers of cash was anything but computer cash?
Yeah, I understand that, but that's not Bitcoin.
Where it's coming
That's
from.
not Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is computer cash.
As long as
As it's leaking into the system, it's inflating it.
As long as you have, all the accounting done right, it's just an issue, and the government then. So, like, say you have $1,000 at Chase Manhattan, you go there, and you say, I want the money in cash. They have to give you cash.
That is true.
It's not cyber cash at that point. But I'll give you that the dots and the debits and credits are there, and they're real. But they're not with Bitcoin in their system.
The point is the money is still treated the same.
Okay.
Whether it's the dollars that are labeled as Bitcoin, or the dollars that are labeled as dollars, or the dollars that are labeled as yuan, or the dollars that are labeled as euros. They're all treated the same in the currency
disagree
system.
on that.
That's the problem.
You will be sent home to study for your homework Gresham's law. Anyway, and all right, so we have much going on in the world. We had the faux truce in the Middle East, and then immediately Syria was attacked through Turkey. Erdogan is one of these not nicest, as a gentleman I will just say, one of the not nicest people in the world. And, you know, who are we allied with there? We are
The
allied.
terrorists.
No, come on, Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
Well, the remnants of the people who knocked down the Twin Towers.
I agree.
Are our allies.
I
now.
agree. That's
And
what I'm saying.
And back years and years ago, as that was happening, I wrote a book, Changing Sides, where, you know, and I cited 1984, where they
Yep.
Oceaneers now
yeah.
at war, you know, that's
With
that.
East Asia
and we're doing,
and
and we're
Eurasia.
doing that.
And, yeah.
And it is being done by the Biden administration. But what do you expect? Anyway,
And it was being done by the Trump administration before that, and then the Obama administration before that.
The
and
Trump
the
was
Bush
in,
administration
the
before
Trump
that.
was in Syria, but that was minor compared to Obama.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Okay, so if you want to say Trump is not a nice guy, let you go. But let's be accurate. His was a minor interlude there,
That's true.
comparatively speaking.
At the
Now, one of the things that I saw a picture of, you know what a warthog is?
A what?
Warthog.
Yes.
Was flying in Syria and bombing.
Okay.
It was one of our planes.
I saw some of the coverage of that, yes.
No declaration of war. Let's stop pretending we have a democracy and a constitution.
Or a Congress that does anything.
Okay, all right. Now, another thing is we're sponsoring a color revolution in Georgia.
Yeah.
And from, you know, that what I mean color revolution is the United States is pushing to overthrow the elected government of Georgia to put in a client state.
And that's partially because the current government, the most recent government of Georgia is refusing to step down, and they basically were our client state.
They were basically.
They were basically the current president of Georgia is originally a French citizen,
Yes.
and she got booted out of office, but she's refusing to leave office.
Yeah. And this is a whole horrible, disgusting thing. And thank you very much,
Joe.
Anthony Blinken, Joe. Well,
Yeah.
is Joe president now?
No.
Is anybody president other than maybe Blinken and Austin occasionally talk? It's a mess. All right. I had one other thing. Can I find it?
And of course, we still have an ongoing war in Yemen that was never declared either.
We want to talk about that because we're losing that one.
I know. And we'll probably be losing the one in Syria too.
Yeah. Well, it looks like that this is we've caught the Syrian government in a bad spot.
Probably temporarily, given the fact that they're allied to the Russians and the Iranians.
Russia is still involved in
Yep.
in the war, and though I think they're at the tipping point, it's fairly soon. It's not one yet.
No, it's not.
So I think part of hitting in Syria now was to get at the Russians.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And we have to be very careful how we do that. Our government doesn't have any sense of blowback or any sense of consequences. When the Russians have made very clear that they're not going to tolerate a whole lot more of this nonsense.
I have only one word for you: 9/11.
Yeah, I agree.
Blowback is blowback. Excuse my language. Blowback is a bitch.
Yep. And 9/11 was minor compared to what the Russians could do to us.
Well,
Hopefully they won't. I think they have enough sanity to know that would be
that would
really
be
awful
that
to
would be
them.
that wouldn't be blowback. That would be a nuclear war.
It would
That
be. I agree.
Well, I mean, there'd be a lot of things blowing back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like ashes.
you'd be able to the future weather reports would have. And today the Rincon count is
Right.
and
Yes.
you'd be referring to your kids as crispy critters, you know, things like that. Thank you very much. But the money laundering. Oh, one thing interesting that happened to me at the farmers market last week. I have my book there, guy picks it up and he's talking about it, and it's basically an argument for a neutralist, foreign policy. And he says, the United States could not survive as a neutralist country.
Of course it could.
What?
It very much could. Our government,
that's
we
not the
currently
point.
stand, couldn't
this
do
is
it.
the guy,
the country could.
but let's think about what this guy was basically saying.
Okay.
I wouldn't, before this, I wouldn't write a book about it if I didn't believe it was.
Right, of course.
So I said, what the heck do you mean? He says, well, all the big, trillions and trillions, all the big natural resources start at Ukraine and continue into Russia.
There's some truth to that.
No, there's a big truth, because I then went in, and it is the truth.
There's a lot of it there. I agree.
Huge amounts.
Absolutely.
It's not some truth. I know you like to say that there's some truth.
Well, there's tons. There is a ton of resources there. It's not. I mean,
it may not be all
huge.
in the world.
It's a huge amount. There's no question about that.
But it's
Yes.
the big supply in the whole world.
There's a huge ton of it. There's a lot of it. I agree.
It's the hugest amount in the whole
There's a lot of
world in one spot. That doesn't mean we don't have some lithium in this country. It doesn't mean there's precious. There's the what do you call metals?
There's stuff all over the place. China
in
and
China
Congo and various other
but
places. Yeah. Sure.
Where the big stuff is.
That's all I got. A lot of stuff there.
Starts in Ukraine, continues into Russia. And I mean, then we'd have to really seriously trade for them. They would have a big stuff to sell.
Yeah.
But it also is basically, the foreign policy of going after Ukraine and going after Russia is to get those resources.
Oh, absolutely. Lindsey Graham admitted it about 3 weeks ago.
What?
Lindsey Graham admitted it about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
One of the few true things he ever said.
Oh, he says true things, but they usually don't redound to his credit.
Yeah, true.
But we would have to trade for things.
Yep.
But we've done that for hundreds of years. The whole world does.
Yep.
And if Russia wants to sell us stuff, buy it at a fair price.
Right.
Now, a few years ago, at the beginning of the war, there's a group, the U.S. Helsinki group.
Yep.
They held a big conference decolonizing Russia.
I remember that.
Yeah. That is, what they're saying is basically break up Russia.
Yeah.
But they're saying it to be nice to the other people in Russia. But what they don't say, the story behind the story, is we want the resources.
Of course.
And
That's exactly what we did with decolonization of Africa.
Yeah.
We slid our corporations in there to take advantage of their resources. Yeah. And we're still looting them. And we would do that to Russia too.
Them. And that's the thing. I mean, we should be paying, we should be exploiting at a fair price. So the the Africans, the Russians, everybody gets the fair dollar.
Yeah.
Are they basically saying we can't trade honestly and correctly? Well, essentially.
Basically, yes.
Well,
That's
they're
what
basically saying we want. And I know from knowing you for a long time, you're going to say, well, it's all crony capitalism. But America has too many crony capitalists.
I agree.
The whole military and industrial complex is crony capitalism.
Totally. I agree.
And that should end. And,
I agree.
and will it end? And I just wanted to mention one thing before we go, because the time is almost up. I feel sorry for Gus, so we're going to hold a telethon next month to get him his own clipboard.
I have a clipboard in my backpack.
You can't take the teasing. You can't take the teasing. I have been. What can you do with this guy? So you go ahead. Why didn't you have your clipboard? It looks classier.
Oh, okay. I've got a whole bunch of notes on my clipboard, basically for a novel I'm working on, actually.
Oh, okay. We're not good enough for you to have notes to work on. That's okay.
And the one last comment that I wanted to throw in, the other thing I wanted to say that I brought in is, just a thought to think about is how stupid censorship is. You know, we were coming on the way in here, and you know, we were listening to the radio, and I don't know if you listen to rock. I don't. I assume you don't.
It's considered, I consider it mostly noise.
Okay. Well, this particular song was mostly noise, but I thought it was interesting that they were bleeping out one of those standard four-letter words, but they left the much more insulting crazy bitch that's in the song repeatedly. And that makes no sense at all. I mean, I don't think the whole concept of censorship makes any sense anyway.
Well,
But that's the sense of, okay, are you going to bleed out the supposed swear or the one that's really the genuinely insulting term?
okay, all right. I'm not going to get in, but you know.
I think the song is stupid anyway.
But I mean, all this stuff about misinformation for the last several years has been censorship.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree with that.
It's of course been the Democratic Party. You know, not that they've been censoring Republicans, so Republicans are against it. But I mean,
they're censoring third parties too.
What?
They're censoring third parties too.
Yeah, okay, well, that makes it good. No. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be censored for a month because we have to depart right now. But thank you very much. This is Richard Morco and Gus Steves saying goodbye for the Long Hill Report, and we hope to see you next month.
We'll see you in 2025.